All right, we're just going to look at a lesson that's inspired by Wassily Kandinsky. Wassily Kandinsky has inspired several of my lessons in the elementary classroom. The nice thing about Wassily Kandinsky is that he incorporates both the elements of art, like we're looking at color and shape, and also music, because he was actually inspired by music to make his work. So his work, he would listen to music and he would actually paint and draw what he sees through the music. So this is a great way to incorporate music into your curriculum. So traditionally, what I have students do when I'm working with Wassily Kandinsky, we have a fun day where we all decide what song we want to play while we listen or while we make artwork on Wassily Kandinsky, and we're inspired by the music that we choose. So in the past, I just had 5 songs. I would play each of the 5 songs for them, and then they would all vote on which one the whole class decides to listen to over and over again to inspire the work. So that's one added aspect to Wassily Kandinsky's work. The other thing I want to talk to you about is that this is a really good lesson to show how you can adapt the lesson for students with varying special needs. So what I have for you here is a good idea to start with every lesson is to have the inspiration images that you can place at every table. So I'm in multiple copies, so I can place that at every table for the kids to actually touch and look at and see. Having it just on the whiteboard sometimes is not enough, especially with students with special needs. They might need to have that closer because seeing that far away is very difficult. I would also suggest laminating it so that it becomes more durable and you can use it year after year. Okay, so typically what you do after you introduce Wassily Kandinsky, you show some of his work, you have the students analyze the work, right? What shapes are you seeing? What colors do you see? And what kind of patterns do you see? How many squares do you see? How many circles do you see? So it's a lot of fun to analyze, and the kids will really look to analyze this work. So other things you need besides copies of the work is a piece of paper, and I like this to be like a thicker construction paper because you will be adding paint to it, especially watercolor paint. Ideally, watercolor paper would be the best if you're working with watercolors. But I do know that that's expensive and difficult to come by in the elementary classroom. So we're going to attempt this with paper that I think you would have readily available. This is just regular drawing paper or white construction paper. Ideally, working larger is better, and especially with students with special needs. I actually wrote a grant and I got easels put in my room because it's really nice for kids to actually work while holding it upright. So we clamped it and then the kids could see it, because it's sometimes very difficult for kids to be looking down if their attention cannot move in that direction. So actually having the easels and having the artwork look up it provides a lot more accessibility for many students. So that's something to consider. You can even get tabletop easels for students who need that. Okay, other things you will need. I have this. Obviously, you will not be having the students use this. You will not be having the students use this, but you will be using it as a teacher to get your templates ready. You'll need a pencil, oil pastels, and or crayons. I'd love for you today to experiment with both so you can see how they work. You should have them in your toolbox. And we're gonna need some watercolors. This is the first time we're working with watercolors. I got a beautiful fresh set here. I have several things that I've gathered around the room that are circular shaped. This is one thing that is a lot of fun for students to do. You can send them out on a hunt in your classroom to find things that are circular for you to be able to trace. So I found these 3 objects here. A roll of tape would be really good too, some cups, anything that is round. A cup like this is round. Some cardboard. And what I've done here, and this is why I have this X-Acto blade, is I've actually cut out a template cardboard using this X-Acto blade. If you can use scissors, that's good too, but it's not necessarily this that I want to keep. It's actually this, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a little bit. And of course you need water for watercolors and paper towels to clean your brush. Okay, so let's get started. When you have your piece of paper, a lot of people are going to be tempted to fold the paper to create the different squares in here. And while that's a nice idea, I usually stray away from that because I don't like folded paper, because then I don't think it looks really nice on the wall. So I suggest you use like another piece of paper to lightly draw the lines for the students. Or if you want to, you can have them fold the paper. It's up to you on your preference. I prefer very gently, and you can have a teacher volunteer to do this. Divide up this space, and it doesn't have to be perfect, into about 6 squares or rectangles here. Okay. Ideally they'd be squares. You could measure this out perfectly if you'd like to. Depends on what kind of teacher you are. Mine are not going to be as exact, and you can see even Wassily Kandinsky's examples here. This rectangle here is larger than this rectangle, so they're not perfect in any way. And that's the fun part about working with artwork like this, is that you don't have to be perfect in this assignment. You don't even have to stay inside the lines. You can see Wassily Kandinsky goes over the lines. Okay, so I've made my light squares here, and now as a student, it is my time to start to draw my circles. Okay, so I told you about this. I learned this as one of the most valuable tools when I was learning to be an art teacher. Is another art teacher told me to think about using the negative space for tracing. Some students will have an easy time to just trace around an object. I always teach them to hold the pencil at the end. Don't hold the pencil close. Actually, it's easier to trace when you're holding far away. Hold the pencil far away and trace around. Some students will be able to do this. But for a lot of students, that is a very hard task to actually trace around. But it is easier to trace on the inside. So I'm going to give you another example here. I'm going to trace a circle on the inside. Look how easy that is. Okay, and I actually like that circle because it's not as perfect as that circle. So then you're going to have the student repeat several times a larger circle into each square. So you can talk about squares, you can talk about rectangles, you can talk about how does the circle touch all the edges. There's a lot of math involved in this assignment here. If you fold your paper 1 time, how many squares do you get? If you fold it 2 times, how many squares do you get? Okay, so I've got my basic circles. Now I'm going to look and hunt for circles that are smaller. And notice here that not all these circles are misshapen or are all normal or exactly circle-like. So you can see they're kind of oval. So depending on the student's ability, you can have them continue to trace, and maybe some of them they trace. And then maybe some of them you start encouraging them to use the circle that they already see and draw another circle inside. So you want to try and get them to draw about 3 circles inside. Okay, I'm going to use this one. And notice I'm making a mistake here, but that's okay. Right? And I'm also doing it off center. You can see that some of his circles are off center. And have them draw lightly. This is one of the hardest things for students to know to do with a pencil, is to draw lightly. And I'm going to do one more. And it all depends on the level of your students. You can stop right here and have them start to do the next step, or you can have them go even further to a smaller circle like this. Okay, and you can have them hand draw the circles too. Okay, all right, so now you've got your circle set up. The next step we're going to do is we're going to do some oil pastel and crayon magic. The cool thing about oil pastels, wax and oil resist water. So you're going to see the kids are going to really enjoy being able to do a crayon or an oil pastel resist. So this is going to be up to you how you teach the color theory here. You can decide if you want to regulate their color, if you want them to alternate between primary colors, secondary colors. This is kind of the art teacher or the teacher in you and how much you want to control. I do like to teach the idea of contrast. with my higher level students. But sometimes with students with special needs, you need to be more direct, okay? You can't have them just choose. A lot of times, some students are even nonverbal and cannot choose the colors. If they are nonverbal, I'll show you one way that I like to do it, is I love to give them color choice. I don't want to choose colors for them. This is how I do it. I say, would you like the orange or would you like the white? And a lot of times the kids can look at just the color with their eyes and they can be able to choose it for you. They also might have a talker that they can use to help relay the information to them. But giving them just a choice of 2 colors is a really good way to start, and so that they're not having to make so many decisions by looking at that entire set here. So I'm going to go ahead and start working with both oil pastels and crayons, and I'm going to speed up the video for you so that you don't have to watch it. Oil pastels are going to be much, much more vibrant and have a really nice resist to the watercolor, but they are a little bit harder to clean off your fingers and they're a little bit messier. So depending on your students and who you're working with, you may or may not want to do each. I want you to practice with both because I want you to have that experience. Some of the circles you can see I did thicker and some of them I did thinner. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be able to add watercolor to these images afterwards. I did want to make a note to you, as you saw maybe in one of my parts of my video, that I actually snapped a crayon in half because I was bearing down really hard. And so I did want to make a note that there are special crayons you can get for students who have difficulty with gripping. They are triangular ones, or they're larger ones. Even with students who are pre-K, you're going to want larger crayons. And if you don't have them, I wanted to let you know that you can adapt your own materials for students with special needs who have gripping issues. So, for example, just folding up a paper towel and wrapping it around a pencil or a crayon, and then adding masking tape, all of a sudden you have yourself a nice grip. Okay, so you can do the same thing with the oil pastels as needed for your students. Of course, you can go to a catalog and purchase all these materials. Depending on your budget that you're working with, you might have to start to make do with what you have. Next up, I'm gonna put away all of my pastels and my crayons so they don't get wet as I work with my watercolor. Okay, and some tips with working with watercolor. Watercolor is really nice because it automatically comes with a brush. When you're working with students with special needs, obviously having a brush with a larger, thicker handle is going to be a lot better. So working with something like this instead of the small one that comes with it. So one thing I like to teach the kids is to tickle the paint. Okay, the tickle inside. You don't want them ramming their brush into it. You know that kids will put the brush in here and start squeezing and ramming the brush inside of the paints. So I teach them to tickle. There's another thing I teach them is when they're cleaning their brush, I keep the paper towels on the right side here, or if they're right-handed. Okay, I'm going to teach you how I teach them to dip into the paint water tray. You have to really teach this. I teach them to tap the bottom of it gently and then rub-a-dub-dub on the side of the tub. Notice they rub. And then you wipe it on the paper towel like this until it comes out mostly clear. Okay, so a lot of kids, what you're going to find that they want to do is they want to dip it in here and they want to jam it down really hard, so that'll ruin your brush. And secondly, they want to tap it like that. If they start tapping it, and it just did it all, actually my computer's over here, I started to get water all over the table. So I teach them how to rub-a-dub-dub on the side of the tub. And then you're going to add water to the paint tray that you want. So I keep adding water until it gets it nice and loose. And I teach them just to tickle it. I don't rub my brush into it. I tickle it. And I'm going to find a contrasting color here to work with, and I'm just going to start to fill in the white areas. Notice that the oil pastel or the crayon will keep you centered into the area you want to work. And I also like to teach them to work with all the red that you want to do first. So then you don't have to change out your color very often. So I go around and do everywhere that I want to add the red. I think I need one more spot of red. Red's one of my favorite colors. Notice that there's no white in the colors here. So you might want to encourage your students, if they want white, that they use pastels or oil pastels to get inside of that space. Now I'm ready to change my color. Rub-a-dub-dub on the side of the tub, wipe it on the paper towel. Then just add the clean water. And I'm going to go with orange next. Makes it really easy. And notice that I'm allowed to go over the lines because Kandinsky's images, you can see that he goes over the lines too. And there you have it. Just let this dry. Make sure you let it dry flat, or else you can see the watercolor will move around, so make sure you put it on a flat surface.